With the opposition, Ms Lauder.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. I rise today to speak to the motion in regards to the lease variation review. In the 2017-18 budget, the lease variation charge on unit titling of residential dwellings was increased from a tiered scale of $7,500 and $5,000 per dwelling to a flat charge of $30,000 per dwelling, on the grounds that this will improve consistency with the per-unit charges which apply to other types of residential lease variations. It's an interesting motion that we see here today. It's a bit of smoke and mirrors from Mr Rattenbury, because what we see here is Mr Rattenbury standing up in this chamber, calling on himself as a minister in the Barr Labor government to do something. This is a motion that was originally put on the paper, Madam Assistant Speaker, by Ms Lakuta. It's a Greens motion. It's sat on the table for the past few sitting weeks in her name. So it's a Greens having a bite at the cherry twice. The lease variation charge is a tax that has never brought in the amount of money that the government expected it to. The lease variation charge stifles growth in Canberra. Madam Speaker, this is something that has been brought forward by Mr Rattenbury as a member of the executive member's business. But it's actually a Greens motion that was put onto the notice paper by Ms Lakuta. So Mr Rattenbury has obviously already discussed this in the executive, obviously already knows the government is going to support it. It's this big new LVC tax, which proves that the ACT Labor Greens government is all talk and no action. There's been silence at budget time, at budget estimates from the Greens about this. This is a tax that will increase the price of housing in the ACT. And it's important that we review the LVC across the board, but it didn't mean a Greens motion now dressed up as executive member's business to do that. The government can review LVC at any time, and in fact you would have thought, Madam Assistant Speaker, you would have thought that the government had undertaken such a review before making that enormous 300% increase in LVC on units in the last budget, instead of just apparently randomly and arbitrarily making that increase. I'm a bit gobsmacked, Madam Assistant Speaker. The change encourages people to build and retain. It doesn't encourage people to build and sell, this increase on unit LVC. It doesn't encourage more land being put to market. Instead, it encourages, and I think this is a term used by Ms Lakuta herself, it encourages the building of McMansions. I think that was put in the newspaper article in the Canberra Times that quoted Ms Lakuta, and I think it's even covered in the motion itself. Sorry, I haven't read through it there. But many young people especially will be worse off under this particular change. The government didn't consult with relevant stakeholders. We heard this in the estimates process. The government didn't consult with master builders. I guess we shouldn't be surprised with that, because apparently the government doesn't like talking to master builders at the best of time, unless they have approval, prior approval, from the unions to do so. And obviously either they didn't ask the unions for permission to meet with master builders to talk about it, or the union denied permission to talk about it. The government didn't consult with the Property Council either. And that was very clear in the evidence given on the Community Day at budget estimates hearings. So the government didn't bother speaking with those in the know, those on the ground, those who know how these changes will impact on the sector. Prior to this change, if a builder bought a house block in a suburb such as Dixon or Turner, or any suburbs built before 1971 to convert to units, they faced a strata title charge of $7,500 a unit for the first 3 units and $5,000 a unit after that. This charge is now hiked to $30,000 a unit. By anyone's measure, any one of us here would see that as an enormous increase if that was something we had to pay, from $7,500 to $30,000. It's just incredible. For a 6-unit development, that pushes the cost from $37,500 to $180,000. It moves many developments from viable to unviable and, as I said earlier, will contribute to housing unaffordability, because if builders go ahead with this, they need to factor that cost into the price, the sales price. So it's going to affect everyone who wants to buy a unit in Canberra. It just doesn't stack up. Prior to the budget, a dual occupancy built on Schedule 1 land would have incurred a lease variation charge of $7,500. In the last 6 years, this has seen 1,368 dwellings being developed, while a dual occupancy built on Schedule 2 land incurs a lease variation charge of around $35,000, give or take. And in the last 5 years, 244 dwellings have been built on Schedule 2 land. Madam Assistant Speaker, it's clear that by increasing the lease variation charge, many of these developments will no longer be viable. Despite this, the government has decided on the creation of a dual occupancy lease variation charge of $60,000. That will be apportioned on the sale of those units. The price will be driven up. We've already seen the number of rushed development applications that were put in since this announcement. Had the government done its job on consultation from the start, there would have been no need to backtrack and put in that honeymoon period to allow people who'd already purchased their land to have their developments without paying this 300% increase. Good policy, Madam Assistant Speaker, good policy happens when there's consultation. This is something that I've said over and over and over again, and it's not happening here. So what we've seen is that the Greens passed and supported the budget through the Cabinet process and then again on the floor of the Assembly to support the increase in LVC. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to ride in like a white knight on their charger and say, oh, we're going to call for a review of LVC. But it was they who supported this increase, this unfair and inequitable increase in the first place. So they supported an increase in the LVC, but are now arguing for a review of it here. This isn't Greens business time. That was yesterday when they could have put forward a motion. Instead, they put forward a motion about the canopy of trees and having a tree canopy curator, instead of putting this forward, which has been on the notice paper for weeks, coming from Ms Lakuta. So what we're seeing here is there's many bites from Ms Lakuta in trying to get to talk about her private members' issues. They're subverting the process in the Assembly by using executive members' business to put forward what was essentially a Greens motion. And I can just see now the tweet from Mr Rattenbury saying LVC increase. We voted for it in the budget. Now we're trying to pretend we're going to save you. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. It's just the kind of thing I would see from Mr Rattenbury. He likes to put forward proposed tweets for other people, and there's one for him to put through. The government have already had to backtrack on this change, making conditional arrangements for the next 6 months and a review in 18 months' time. This is policy on the run. They should have done their homework first up and consulted with the people who know what needs to be done in this area, the people who are concerned about housing affordability, the people who understood that this increase would contribute to housing unaffordability. Instead, we saw the Greens support the budget, support this through the Cabinet process, support it on the floor of the Assembly, and now try and make out as though they're very, very concerned about the outcome. Madam Assistant Speaker, this is not the way to develop good policy. The lease variation charge is something that we on this side have often talked about. It's a policy that has never raised the amount of revenue that the government said it would. We've also seen remission of LVC to certain developers worth millions of dollars, in some cases to people aligned with the Labor Party and the Labor movement. So, Madam Assistant Speaker, I guess the Braddon development is just one example of that, where the charge was levied based on its current use, not on the future use of apartments, and it's just appalling. It's something that is benefiting the union movement here in the ACT.
Members, I can't hear Ms.
Benefiting the
Lauder.
union movement and not bringing, it's a bad tax, it's not bringing in the revenue. We're giving remissions to certain people who are in the know, and they include people aligned with the Labor movement. This, Madam Assistant Speaker, this is where the integrity issues that we've been speaking about for the past few weeks come into play. It's just not good enough that people can subvert the system like this, starting with the Greens, bringing on a motion as a Greens motion and then moving it to executive members' business so that they can have a couple of bites of the cherry. Then also the system itself, the whole LVC system. Oh, we're going to support LVC in the budget, but now we're going to pretend that we're trying to save everyone in the development sector by bringing forward this motion. Madam Assistant Speaker, it's hypocritical. It's absolutely hypocritical to bring forward a motion like this when you've supported it in the budget. And for that reason, we will not be supporting this motion today. It's not appropriate for the government, it seems like the government, it's not appropriate for Mr Rattenbury, as the Greens member, to bring this in. It's walking both sides of the street, approving the budget, but saying we need to do a review because it's so unfair. It's supporting the budget, but saying we have to do a review. So they're saying one thing and doing another. It's all smoke and mirrors, Madam Assistant Speaker. It's having a bet each way. It's having their cake and eating it too. And basically, it's saying to every developer, every potential home buyer and unit buyer in Canberra, hashtag sorry, not sorry.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. No. I declare that the ayes have it. Aye, noes have it. Division called. Ring the bells. Ms Berry for Mr Dospot, Mr Gentleman for Mrs Jones and Mr Pedersen for Mr Milligan.